With that, we're going to bring in a gentleman who does not need an introduction, and that's, of course, the legendary Bob Proctor. Bob Proctor, welcome to the new Psychology of Winning tour. The first question for you, sir, is how excited are you to be a part of this tour, and what does Denis Waitley mean for you personally?
Listen, I'm very, very happy and excited to be a part of anything Denis Waitley's doing. Denis Waitley really impacted my life many, many years ago. We were going through a change back from the 60s to the 70s. And Denis really helped us make that breakthrough. And here we are going through tremendous change again. And right back at bat is Denis Waitley. Listen, he's a great guy. He's got the best information that you're going to get your hands on if you want to keep your mind in harmony with the universe. And I think that's what we're all trying to do.
Well, we are, Bob, and it's so great to see you. I knew you'd be wearing a really great suit and a tie, and you look so professional. I'm saying, here I am in my sweater, and Bob is dressed like he always is, dressed for business, ready to go with a library behind him, some of the greatest books. And Bob, it's so great to be with you because you and I are the grandfathers in this business, you know, not just the fathers, but we go back so far that both you and I were groomed by Earl Nightingale himself. So you were working directly with Earl, you know, when I met him. So you and I we're in the same vintage. You and I are the same vintage wine. You know, we're well done, but rare. We're rare, but well done. So I'm really eager to talk to you and share with you our own journey and help people today learn from all the mistakes you and I have made and the journey we've had. But you're the one I really wanted to be on with because you and I go back right to the beginning of both of our careers. So let's get started. So tell me first, what's going on in your life right now?
I'm busier than I've ever been, Denis. We're operating all over the world. We have a distributor division in our company. And in 1973, when I left Nightingale Conant, I sat down with a pen and I wrote out I was going to build a company that operates all over the world. In March of this year, we were doing a program. We had 93,000 people registered. And Mikey Steller, who's our COO, she said, Bob, I don't know if you realize this, but you've just gone into every country in the world.
Wow.
We have our own broadcasting station here. It's like a television station that I built to broadcast this. And we broadcast now into every country in the world. But I would like to step aside from that for a moment. And I'd like to share with the audience something that you might not even know, Denis. When you went to work with Nightingale Conant, when the Psychology of Winning was first released, you were the first speaker, author that was ever promoted by Nightingale Conant, where they promoted someone other than Earl Nightingale. Nightingale Conant Corporation only promoted Earl Nightingale's material, no one else's material. I worked there. I was selling for them, but Earl Nightingale was the only author that they sold. You were the first one outside of Earl's material, and he took you on because he liked your work. He really liked what you did. And of course, the world likes it now. That's where it started. I thought you'd be interested in that.
Wow. You know, I had that feeling because Earl was semi-retired and he called me from Florida and he said, you know, this is Earl Nightingale. I nearly fell off my chair. He said, I heard this little tape of yours. You got good stuff. If you're ever in Chicago, stop by and see my partner, Lloyd Conant. So I stopped by with my last $500 and just happened to be passing by the office, I said. And I wasn't lying, but I was using my last $500 to get there. I had written this manuscript at the worst time in my life when I had just been divorced, had custody of my children. So I wrote The Psychology of Winning at the worst time in my life, which is something the audience should realize. They should realize that when things are going well, you coast. But when things are not going well, you have to dig deep into your self-awareness and bring out that something special in the worst of times. That's why that great book, A Tale of Two Cities, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times, depending on how you want to deal with what happens. But, you know, Bob, back then, Earl had, as we both know, this great, deep, radio booming Sky King voice. And I used to listen to him on the radio when he was playing the part of Sky King. And then I saw Our Changing World when he was on the radio in Chicago. And when I listened to The Strangest Secret on my little 45 record player, first it was a regular record, then it was a 45, and only later it became an audio tape. But something you probably don't know, and I don't think any of the audience knows, in order for me to record that album, not being a known speaker, not ever being on the radio, not having a dynamic Earl Nightingale voice, not really knowing much about the recording business, Earl Nightingale himself had to stand in the engineering booth against the glass and look at me. And I had a script on a piano, one of those little music stands, and they made me read it. And I said, why do I need to read it? I just want to talk about the psychology of winning. And Lloyd Conant said, well, first of all, the psychology of winning is kind of a psychology today college type of thing. It's not really an exciting title. I said, no, but I did it because of POW, Prisoner of War, Prince of Wales, Power of Women, Putting on Weight, Prisoner of World, and then Psychology of Winning was a metaphor as an acronym. And they said, we know, but you need to read the script to be on target so you don't wander off into one of your stories. So Earl Nightingale himself is standing in the booth with his arms folded, looking at me and saying, come on, Denis, you can do this. Talk with me, not present to me. Don't speak to me or give me a lecture. Talk with me about what is winning. I want to hear it come. He said, that microphone you're speaking into is a human being. It is a person in the front row. And you need to talk with me about the psychology of winning. And I was sweating and I was a little nervous. And in order for me to deliver that album, I had to talk to him in the booth as if he were my audience. And I learned that day that when you're giving a talk, you're not giving a presentation. You're actually having a conversation with somebody directly with them. And I think you've been able to do that. I know Zig Ziglar, Jim Rohn, Les Brown, all these others are able to have a conversation, not make a presentation. So I had to learn that way. And I have a great face for radio, but I may not have the exciting voice for it. But that's something that not many people know, that I had to have Earl Nightingale coach me to do the first album. And because he endorsed it and because he did the foreword, I'm sure that was the main reason why it was successful. Because, you need to have something like that when you're not known. You need to have success by association. And that's another thing. You've done so much on that. So I don't mind talking about that, but I'm really eager to have the audience, when we're talking, get take-home value that they can use every day. And I know you've got a lot to say about that. So I'm all ears as well as one mouth.
Well, you and Earl must have done a very good job at that, because The Psychology of Winning was the biggest selling album that Nightingale Conant ever had.
Well, I didn't realize that was going to happen. In fact, I had no idea at all. I knew it was their lost leader, which means that they used the album to build their mailing list through MasterCard. And so they did lots of mailings. In those days, as you remember, we used automated typewriters that were all tied together, and they would automate these letters with Earl Nightingale's signature. It would go out with the brochure, and then they'd order the album. What I had no idea is that from that first moment, now remember, I just left the Salk Foundation. I was president of the Jonas Salk Foundation. I didn't have a job. I didn't have any income. I had just a little money left over when the album hit in 1978. So it took me 2 years to convince Nightingale Conant to even do the album after Earl had suggested that I go there. So these things don't happen overnight. But what happened is that I received a large royalty check every month for the next 20 years, from 1978 to 1998. And they actually sold over that period, I think, $100 million, because the albums in those days were $50 for 6 cassettes. So you had 6 cassettes in a $50 album. But my royalty was $1 because I was unknown. I was building their list. I was somebody they were taking a chance on. And Lloyd Conant, many years later, said, I bet you wonder why you only got the $1 for the $50. I said, not really. I was very fortunate to get anything as an unknown. I was just so excited to be part of it. And he said, well, had you asked for more, we wouldn't have done the album, because we were taking a risk on you by direct marketing. And had you been a hog instead of a little piggy, in other words, had you not accepted our royalty arrangement, we would never have done the album. So I said, well, wow, I feel very grateful, because sometimes people say, well, don't I get 10% or 6% or the normal book royalty? But it was a little less because they were taking a chance. But I'm so excited because that was 40 something years ago. And I think being up to date as you are, here you are as one of the grandfathers of this entire industry, reaching more people today than we ever dreamed we ever could, would ever be possible, because you can only sell so many cassettes and put it in your player in your car as you're traveling down the road. Things have changed for the better in terms of technology and communication. Everyone in the audience has the library of the world in their hand, and they also have the power to communicate throughout the world. Wow, what a time to be alive.
You know, the beautiful truth is, Denis, everyone has a phone today, and everyone has their own frequency. So you can tap into any speaker, any seminar from anywhere. It's all in the ether. And we can tap into it. We can get the best of information in a heartbeat today. It's all sitting here waiting for us. Now, the crazy part about this, Denis, is there's so much of it that's available to us, and yet there's so few people take advantage of it. The odds or the numbers really haven't changed very much. There's about 5% of the population who are really winning, who've tapped into the psychology of winning, and there's 90-some% that are struggling. So there's a huge market out there, and there's a lot of information. Unfortunately, not everybody's tapping into it. And I think they do once or twice. They'll listen to it, and they'll say, well, that's pretty good. But once or twice doesn't work. It's the repetition of listening to this that makes a difference. You know, in 1961, Denis, a man gave me this book, Think and Grow Rich.
Yes.
And he said, if you will read this every day, if you will do exactly what I tell you, you can have anything you want. Now, I didn't believe that. But fortunately for me, I believed he believed it. And I made up my mind I'd do what he told me. And everything in my life changed. And I've never stopped going in that direction, the right direction. And anyone that would get this book, Think and Grow Rich, they're going to win. Anyone tapping into the psychology of winning is tapping into some of the very best information that's available anywhere in the world. And I want to congratulate you for doing such a phenomenal job, because I've been around all the time you've been around. In fact, I was around before you came around. And I've seen what's out there. And Denis, you've got as good of information as you're going to find. So anybody can get their hands on the psychology of winning. Set everything else aside. Just listen to this. But not just once, over and over and over again. It's the repetition of planting this idea in our subconscious mind that makes a difference in our life. That's how we change. Now, it doesn't make sense to listen to the same thing over and over again unless you understand how the mind functions. And when you understand how the mind functions, then it makes a lot of sense.
Boy, that's so true, Bob. You know, if people could understand, you know, neuroscience today is proving everything that you just said. And so we had to go on pure faith that repetition, although we knew it. I knew it from the Apollo program. I knew it from the prisoners of war. I knew it from the Olympians. I know that observation, imitation, repetition, internalization, realization. I know that repetition is everything because it does implant that, but it's been proven by neuroscience that the neural pathways are actually strengthened and then changed and turn into chains. The change comes from the chains that are built inside the neural pathways, and it creates a freeway where there used to be a cul-de-sac. And we were talking yesterday about the fact that what happens when you remember something, it's a music video that you're constantly editing. So every memory is being edited as we go, and you're remembering the good things and you're layering more on top of the old. And you and I have talked about this before, but I think it's worth discussing. Habits are not broken. They're replaced by repetition of layering new software on top of the old software that's driving the hardware program. So the software is what needs to be changed inside the brain. And you not stumbled onto it, but you knew that partially from Napoleon Hill and Think and Grow Rich. But your own work and your own studies and your own, if you will, programs have proven that repetition is the secret to implementation and realization. And I'd like you to go into that a little more deeply with me on this.
Well, you see, I think that Albert Einstein put it very well. He said, everything has its own frequency. Now, one time, at one time, we couldn't all have our own phone. When I was a boy, we did not have a phone. And we didn't have a phone because, first of all, there weren't very many phones, and they were very expensive. And when we did get a phone, we got a party line where there was about 50 other people on the same line. Today, there are millions, literally millions of phones. Every phone has its own frequency. Your phone has its own frequency, the same as mine does. If I dial your number, bang, I'll connect with your phone. Then we've made a connection. Now, if we take that same premise and understand everything has its own frequency, if we want something, we have a picture in our mind that whatever it is has its own frequency. We've got to resonate with that. And it's through repetition that we do resonate with it. Now, when we press that idea on the subconscious mind, we're impressing the idea upon universal intelligence. And that idea resonates with wherever it is in the universe. And we begin to attract to us whatever it is we're in harmony with. Now, it's the repetition of the idea that gets us connect with the good that we desire. We don't all have to study into this in great depth. I've been studying it for 60 years, so I could talk to you about it for a long time, and I'm in love with the information. If a person would accept the idea that repetition will literally change your life, all athletes understand it. They understand the positive impact of repetition. Well, every business person, if they would just stop, they can literally change their life through making a statement of the good they desire, and then through repetition, fix that idea in their mind. They will start to attract to them whatever is necessary for the manifestation of that picture. It's almost, well, to the average person, it's unbelievable because the average person doesn't study. I don't look at Denis Waitley as an average person. I don't look at Bob Proctor as an average person. We've both been studying this for a whole generation. And what I would recommend is that people just take our word for it. We have no reason to lie to you. And we both have a record that would indicate we know what the hell we're talking about. So if you get into the psychology of winning, you're getting into some of the best material there is. But it's only good for you. It's only good to you through repetition. Listen to what Denis is saying and hear it over and over and over again. And you're going to find that your income will start to change. Your business will start to flourish. It's almost unbelievable how magnificent it is and how fast and how well it works. Now,
Bob, you could.
I've been teaching it for a long time, Denis.
No, you have.
I can say unequivocally that your program is one of the best programs in the world.
Well, thank you for that, but I also thank you for the way you explain it so that everyone can understand. And it isn't something that I just only believe in, because I'm a pragmatist in a different way. Having been a Navy pilot, I went through ground school, and remember, I had to pretend I was flying the aircraft in ground school with a cardboard setup of the cockpit to go through all the motions of flying before they ever let me get in and fly the plane. The Apollo astronauts had to play Let's Pretend on the Houston desert and fly the lunar excursion module up and down off the Houston desert in order to get the feeling and the repetition and the muscle memory to fly that spacecraft in outer space. And the athletes you're talking about, if people could just remember that an athlete, a violinist, a dancer, a pianist, a mother planning a wedding, whatever it is you're doing, it's the repetition of the dress rehearsal, doing the real thing in your mind over and over again that creates the ability to reflex it as a habit later on. And when during the 1984 Olympics in Los Angeles, Loren Bacall and I were in a store doing a book signing. I had the Olympic mental training book that I had written with Irving Dardick, the head of sports medicine. Loren Bacall was in the store talking about her life with Humphrey Bogart, and no one came in the bookstore to buy our book because they were going to the Olympic Games in Los Angeles. So when I went over to the games, I had been working alongside people like Carl Lewis, Mary Lou Retton, the swimmers. And what I had discovered that I didn't really realize is that when they ran their event only in their mind, when they were attached to sophisticated biofeedback equipment. Now, you know that biofeedback is an instrument that you put on you to tell the instrument what you're doing, what your temperature is doing, what your muscles are doing, what your brain waves are doing. It's just an instrument like the bathroom scale. I could not believe that when someone like Carl Lewis ran the 100-meter in his mind, that the same muscles in his body were silently firing and rewiring and wiring and repeating, so that when he went to do it in the actual Olympics, he would remember and reflex the winning run, but because he wasn't practicing when he fell or when he had a false start, he was rehearsing and practicing the winning movement. And it really blew my mind to realize, wait a minute, prisoners of war can only play in their mind at all because they're in a 8x8 cell. So they have to live only through repetition in their mind. And yesterday, Bob, we talked about Viktor Frankl and the fact that I had him briefly as a visiting professor at United States National University. And Viktor Frankl said, well, your why is your purpose. But I had to take those people, he said, during the Holocaust, and I had to give them, first of all, a goal. The Allies are coming in 6 months. Stay alive for 6 months. We need to get home to our families. We have a reason to live. We have a purpose. And he gave them incremental stair-step goals and kept repeating over and over again. It'll be over soon. The war is going to be over soon. Stay alive. Remember the names and faces of your captors. Remember every single significant thing you can remember about them so we can get justice. It's your responsibility to live. And that repetition of why you have purpose and the repetition of the steps you're taking through has helped me realize that POW, Prisoner of War, Prince of Wales, Power of Women's Psychology of Winning, is based on the repetition of the right stuff, because the mind cannot distinguish between emotional visualized rehearsal. The dress rehearsal is opening night. And why would you not be practicing what you want to be instead of what you don't want to be? Why would you ever tell your children or yourself what you didn't want to happen, unless it was something to keep you alive because it was a fear? So I think you got onto it a little earlier than I did. And I had to actually become a pilot and work with prisoners and finally become chairman of psychology for the Olympics to see it in action. Reflex. Olympians don't try to win. They remember what they've learned through repetition. 1,200 days of practice for one moment. Wouldn't you want the 1,200 days of practice to lead you toward your best performance ever? Of course you could. Would you practice falling?
Dennis, I was watching Walter Cronkite being interviewed one time on television many years ago. And the interview, of course, Walter Cronkite was working with the astronauts like you were. But he was asked, he said, how do those astronauts develop the courage to walk into that rocket knowing that it may blow up? He says it doesn't take any courage for them to walk into that rocket at all. He said what took the courage was the thousands of hours of mentally walking into that rocket when there was no rocket there. And I thought, wow, is that ever strong? He said when they walk into that rocket, they prepared for that a long time before they ever got near the rocket. I think what you're talking about, what I'm talking about, it requires courage. It requires understanding. It requires a definite target that you're working on. It's like Viktor Frankl said, the Allies are coming in 6 months. He knew that he had to get them involved in a goal. They have to get emotionally involved in something up front. And that's what every person has to do. They've got to get emotionally involved with something up front. Then they've got to muster up the courage to repetitiously listen to the same information over and over and over again. Now, I started to do that when I first picked up this book way back in 61. I was earning $4,000 a year. I owed $6,000. I had no formal education. I had no business experience, but I did exactly what somebody told me. I went from 4,000 to 175,000 a year, and then in under 5 years, I had it over $1 million. I started out working in Toronto. In less than 5 years, my company had an office in Toronto, Montreal, Boston, Cleveland, Atlanta, and London, England. This was all through repetition, and I knew nothing about it, Denis. I was listening because I was so damn fascinated with the information. I could not stop listening to it. And one day in England, I had an office over there. I wanted to go to England, so I thought I'll open an office and work for a while and then sell the business. Well, I was going down to the Playboy Club at the right beside the Hilton Hotel on right in the heart of London, and I'd go in there playing roulette. I didn't care if I lost, and I usually won. One day, I come out of there, and I don't know, 100,000 had gone or something like that. And I thought, you know, I'm being awfully irresponsible. This was just my own thinking. Then I started to think, how did my life change so dramatically? I mean, I had nothing. I didn't believe in luck. People said I was lucky. I knew I wasn't lucky. And I knew I wasn't that smart. So I thought, what the hell happened? How did Bob's life change so dramatically? You know, I couldn't find anybody who could tell me, Denis. Although this is all in the psychology of winning, not many people understand it. I made up my mind I was going to find out why I changed. Do you know it took me 9.5 years? That's when I started to understand it was the repetition. I got involved in the repetition of the ideas. I still have the record sitting here in my office. I've got the handheld record player right over here on the shelf. I had a handheld record player, and I would play these records over and over and over again. And it was through the repetition of playing those things. And I was playing because I loved listening to Earl. Then I got records of Elmer Wheeler and various speakers, Fred Herman. And I started to listen to these. I couldn't stop listening. They were feeding something in me that was hungry. It was my soul. That's what I was feeding. You see, we are a soul. We don't have one. And the soul is forever seeking its awareness of its oneness with that which is. Repetition of the right information changes our life. It prepares the astronaut to go into space. It prepares Denis Waitley to take over as chairman of psychology for the Olympics. This is all very basic if you understand it. But if you don't understand it, it's so simple you can miss it. We're looking for something that's dramatic, that's big, that's complicated. There's nothing about it that's complicated. Any dumbbell can get it because I got it. No formal education, no business experience. It was the repetition of listening to the Lead the Field program by Earl Nightingale, a program you're very familiar with, Denis.
Absolutely.
It's one of the best programs in the world.
Absolutely.
You are bringing out the new psychology of winning.
Well, you know, Earl had Lead the Field for Chevrolet, Lead the Field for Standard Oil. Every major company bought Lead the Field, and that album was going through the entire Fortune 500. All of them were listening, all the company CEOs and their employees. And when the Psychology of Winning album came out, then AT&T called me and then General Electric, Jack Welch. And so I got speaking engagements as a result of Earl Nightingale having promoted me after Lead the Field into those companies. And I backed into a speaking career because I was only getting $100 or $200 or $300 a talk at the most for 10 years. I mean, you know, Zig and I used to talk, and we did, and I know you did too, Bob. I literally gave 400 or 500 talks. I certainly wasn't paid for them. And then I spoke to the Kiwanis, the Rotary, the Optimists, every women's club. I spoke at every garden club, women's club, anybody who would listen, high schools, anything, just to see if the repetition of the information and the way I was delivering it was getting response. When I'd get a good response, I would log that. I recorded every one on a little recorder, but just like you, I was raised with a party line telephone. There was no television until I was a senior in high school. No TV in anywhere until I was a senior in high school. So it was radio, the big Philco radio where you lay on the floor and this big piece of furniture talks to you, and it talks to you every night, and it talks to you in commercials. And I developed a phonographic type of memory. I wasn't very visual because I had to do all my own visualizing, which should have made me visual, but I became an audiophile, absolutely audiocentric. And everything I heard, when I heard The Strangest Secret, you know, I can always remember, we become what we think of most of the time. And we both know thoughts become things. Why? Because you need to think it before it can materialize. Somebody has to build it after you think it. And there have to be these steps in the way. But, you know, I learned the hard way. My career with the speaking industry didn't really begin till I was 43. So people are, you know, in their early 20s right now saying, what kind of app do you have for success? Or give me the action steps so that I can be the new champion or the multimillionaire overnight. And it doesn't happen that way. But that's what they want to hear. They want to hear that there's something that they can insert into their cell phone as an app that will give them the exact steps they need to take. This happens when I travel throughout Asia. The Asians said, we already have a great attitude. We just want to know, how do you get rich overnight? And I said, well, you know, I don't know how to do that. I said, I only know how to get rich step by giving more in value than you receive in payment. First of all, you have to save people money and time in order to get rich. And it isn't just the fact that you're going to tell them how they can get rich. You have to actually work with them to help them. But I don't want to digress because I want to stay on this repetition thing.
Well, you know, the interesting part of this, Denis, is I have never thought of myself as a speaker. And I would venture to say that you've never thought of yourself as a speaker.
No.
And yet we've earned millions of dollars speaking. I never saw myself as a speaker. I'm just very eager and enthusiastic about sharing this information, sharing the necessity of repetition so that people understand it. And I think if there's a lot of young people today that want to be great speakers, get something really valuable to teach people. They'll listen to you. And this idea of repetition is the most valuable idea I can think of because it's so simple and it's so easy to misunderstand. It's so easy to set aside and say there's got to be more to it than that. There is not.
You know, Bob, but it all depends on what you're repeating. So,
no question about it.
So let's say that you go out and here's what I used to do. I used to go out on the golf course with a bucket of balls and practice my mistakes. So I used to repeat my mistakes because I didn't bother to listen to a Bob Proctor or a Gene Littler or a Arnold Palmer or a Lee Trevino. I didn't bother to get a coach who had been there and done that and who had the fundamental, who had the fundamental information to pass on to me. Had I read more, had I learned more, had I gotten involved more, I would have been practicing the right stuff instead of the wrong stuff. But for many years, I practiced losing because I just kept doing the same things, which happens today. You know, they all talk about the Chinese definition of insanity, doing the same things over and over again in repetition, expecting it to be different. I think you need to learn the correct swing, like you and I are talking about, and then simply repeat that to the point where it is so internalized that it becomes like brushing your teeth or driving your car. It is no different than learning how to drive a car, brush your teeth, or do something over and over again, because we're creations of habit. And about 80% of what we do is a reflex according to what we've repeated. You and I both know that. Repetition leads to internalization, and most of what we do is habit forming. And just the habit of winning is so simple if we'll just get the right input from people we can trust with proven track records of success, who've been there and done that, not just talking about it, but they've actually been there and done that. So find role models, mentors, and coaches who practice what they preach, who've been in the trenches, who've actually done the things that you want to do, and they've done them well, and they know how to do it. So all you have to do is learn from them, and that repetition creates the internalization. And right now, Bob, my habits are pretty good because I've been practicing the habits of people who are healthier, stronger, better fathers, better friends, better speakers. I'm not a great speaker. I don't have the presence of Tony Robbins. I don't have the voice of Earl Nightingale. I don't have the dynamism of Les Brown. I don't have the one-liners of Jim Rohn but I'm just me. And I'm so passionate about what I've learned that I want to share it in a focused way. That's why I think you and I can talk about how does someone brand themselves? How can they be special? But I guess it's finding that passion inside of them that burns so brightly that they need to get it out to help people.
Well, you know, we've been talking about repetition. Everyone can benefit from this, Dennis. Everyone has a program in their subconscious mind. That program controls our behavior. That program was first originated at the moment of conception. All mom's DNA and all dad's DNA became your DNA. All their habit patterns were programmed right into your subjective mind. After we were born, our subconscious mind was wide open, and into it went everything that was going on around us in that environment. People on welfare are second, third, fourth, fifth generation welfare recipients. It's a repetition of the same idea, keeps the same people locked in there. And that is what we call a paradigm. A paradigm is nothing but a multitude of ideas in our subconscious mind that literally control our behavior. I was teaching people how they could take a pen, if they're right-handed, put it in their left hand and start signing their name. And if they did it long enough, they would become just as proficient with their left hand as they are with their right. And I saw many people do that. It was teaching the idea of switching the paradigm. We talk about changing habits. You can replace a negative habit with a positive habit. If you sleep in, start getting up early. This is so basic. It's so misunderstood. If you're in your automobile, turn the radio off, turn some personal development on. But turn the same personal development on every time you get in the car for maybe a month. And you're going to literally change your programming. I went to work with the Prudential of America. I had a contract. I worked with the entire company. I ended up working with all of Prudential, State Farm, Metropolitan Life. I got them, all of their people, to form the habit of being in front of someone before 9 a.m. to ask everyone to purchase $100,000 worth of insurance. I said, you don't even have to sell it. Just ask them to buy. Their sales of $100,000 policies went right through the roof. They couldn't understand what was happening. All they were doing was changing habit patterns. They were changing their paradigm. I was showing them how to shift their paradigm. And when that happened, sales went right through the roof. I could have stayed working in the insurance industry forever if I had wanted to. And all I was doing was teaching them how to change paradigms, change habits. And it's repetition that does it. Anyone that will take this new psychology of winning and make up your mind, that's all you're going to listen to for the next 3-4 months. I guarantee you your income will change. Your relationships will improve. Your health will improve. Everything in your life will start to get better because you're going to move on to a higher frequency of thought, and it's going to manifest in your life. I'm not wondering if this will work. I know it will work. As sure as it's going to get dark tonight, what I'm telling you will work, and it will work like unadulterated magic.
Yeah, Bob, you know, I can't say it the way you do enough because you're speaking from experience. You're speaking from someone who's been there and done that. And you know, when you talked about the astronauts and you talked about courage, courage is being prepared for whatever happens. And if you're prepared, you're courageous. Courage is not just blundering into something and trying to be a hero and not just pushing your way. And courage is being so well prepared that the fear is based on the unknown, the fear of failure, the fear of success, the fear of catastrophic loss. Fear stops us because it's always something that we don't understand that we're afraid of, and it keeps us from doing something. Fear compels us to do things that we don't want to do. It inhibits us and keeps us from doing things that we really would like to do. But the best way to conquer fear is to get prepared and through repetition. And I use another analogy, which is let's say that, Bob, you and I are in the service and they ask for 2 volunteers for the bomb defusing squad, the demolition of bombs and explosives. But nobody steps forward. The rest of them step back, and it looks like you and I have volunteered because we didn't back away from it. So they select you and I. But you and I don't want to defuse explosives because we know if we pick the wrong wire, we'll blow up, and that frightens us. But to be a good demolition expert, a good astronaut, a good Olympian, a good salesperson, you have to go through the practice of which wires are the most likely ones to cut and not cause the explosion. Is it the white wire? Is it the green or the red or the blue? And they learn this over and over and over again to the point where they are so well prepared for what possibilities might be set up that they're deemed as courageous. And they come up in these robotic trucks, and they get out with their big lead things that help with the explosive. And they get up there, but their hands aren't shaking. Yes, they're sweating. Are they afraid? No, they're not afraid. They're well prepared, and they're meticulously remembering what they learned before. And that may not be a good example, but I can tell you, when I was working with a Russian figure skater, and she was one of the first Russians who did a triple axis on the ice. And I remember we used pulleys and harnesses because first we had to twist her around 3 times so she could land going on the ice in a harness to make the learning process not have so many falls, to make it successful. And then she did it without the harness, and she did it over and over and over on the ice. 1,100 days, 1,200 days, falling sometimes, but always getting back up. And then when they interviewed her, she said, "Oh, I've rehearsed this so many times backstage, I rarely, if ever, fall. I'm so comfortable in what I've learned, in what I've repeated, that it's become my new way of skating." In other words, I've seen it in every athlete. I've seen it in every Olympian, in every comeback story. I've seen it in everyone I've known who has a bad habit and a good habit. And one more thing about me is I used to be late. What a great name I have to be late. Waitley, wait for me. What have you done for me lately, Waitley? And I was late. Now I know Tony Robbins has had the same problem. So what happens is we both, maybe I did have a little bit of an ego, but I was always getting on the plane right at the end. I would get on just in time before they pulled the ramp back. And, you know, that worked for me. I mean, don't you arrive late to the theater and don't you come a little later to a guest party? That's a bunch of bull. If you keep people waiting, it shows you're not thinking about them. You're so involved in yourself that you're not making contingency planning to be on time. They got me to the point where they said, you know, we're not going to believe you anymore because you show up late and we don't like it. And we don't like the way you're treating us because you're late for meetings. Wake up call. I get the Bob Proctor, Earl Nightingale Think and Grow Rich repetition program. What do? Am I still late? Yes. Am I a procrastinator? Yes. Oh no, not the new psychology winning Waitley. I'm first at the gate Waitley. I'm on time Waitley. I arrive early Waitley. I get up early. I set the alarm. I have a second set of travel plans in case the plane has left. I needed to do this for 6 months, every single day. And finally, after 6 months, every day, I'm first at the gate Waitley. I'm usually on time. If I'm not on time, I'll call you to tell you that I'll be late because of this. I'll try to plan for the traffic. I'll try to plan for rush hour. I'll try to plan for the weather, but I'll try to plan in such a way that I can get that front row seat, that I can listen to the speaker, that I can be there to take notes, not sitting in the back so I can escape, but to be up front and involved. It took me 6 months, and now I realize that I need to practice what I preach, and practice makes permanent. Only perfect practice makes perfect, and none of us is perfect. That's only for the saints. So we're going to make mistakes. We're going to fall back. We're going to go to the buffet line. We're going to have a dessert. We're going to fall off the wagon. That's human nature because we're flawed. But if you'll do what Bob is talking about so succinctly, believe me, I know that it works. I know that it works for me in the small ways. It's worked for me to be successful. It's worked for me to overcome. And Bob, I have to thank you because Moe mentioned before you came on, the fact that you sent me a subconscious program that I used for 3 months straight, and then another 3 months in 2 skilled nursing facilities where they had a COVID breakout, and I was confined to a 9x12 room for 6 months without being able to go outside to have visitors, to talk to I could talk to my family on the phone, but I couldn't have anybody. I was in my little prisoner of war, and I listened and I watched. I listened to Bob telling me, and I listened to me programming me, get out of bed, get on that frequency, healthy, get back to being who I want to be. And I listened to that. And I also got one from John Azarath, and I got some encouragement from Brian, but you really did help me during those were dark times. I mean, I didn't know whether I was going to make it. Well, I knew I was going to make it, but the doctors didn't think I was going to make it. They kept telling me, we're surprised you're still alive. You're too old to be going through this much radiation and chemotherapy. It's not looking good for you. No, don't tell me that. Let me listen to Bob again. I want to listen to where I'm going, not where I'm coming from. And I want to thank you very much for being a part of the fact that I'm on live. I am here, and I do base that on the way you can program. And do I pray? Of course I do. Do I believe in creation of the universe? Of course I do. I don't believe in accidental anything. I believe that accidents are caused by either somebody doing something wrong or something happening that's wrong. But I also believe that when you're practicing the right stuff, that you cannot help but move toward that upon which you dominate. The brain moves to its currently dominant thought every moment of every day. And whatever you're putting in, you're getting out. So you will get what you come for. If you expect this not to be interesting, it won't be. If you expect to learn something from this, you will, because you'll be on the frequency, in the awareness, with your repetition and ready to go. But Bob, I had to get the thank you in there for helping me through a very tough time.
Listen, Denis, anything we can do for you is always a plus for us. You have helped a lot of people for a long time. And I believe this new program is just going to reinvent the whole wheel for people. It's what they need. It's what they've got sitting in front of them. All they have to do is say, I'm going to use that. And then start using it daily, every day. Everything we've said here over the past hour is absolute truth. We didn't invent it. We're just fortunate enough to become aware of it. We become aware of it because we listened to teachers and leaders that knew more than we did. So I want to thank you, Denis. I want to thank you for having me on here with you, because you're one of the best. And anytime you can be connected with the best, it's good for you. So I want to thank you. It's been a pleasure.
It goes both ways. I thank you so much that I just can't put it in any other words except it's a real honor to have a conversation with you like this. And I'll cherish this for the remainder of my 100 years.
Thank you. Thank you, Denis.
Moe, you're muted.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the new Psychology of Winning tour, and you just heard one of the most powerful conversations between two icons, two living legends. What a touching moment. Now, Mr. Bob Proctor, before we part ways, just want to ask you to share your final thoughts with our audience about Denis Waitley, about the experience that you've had here on the new Psychology of Winning tour on the Los Angeles Tribune TV network. And also, Bob, there's a lot of people that look up to the two of you. Our audience, especially with this particular event, consists of so many different demographics, one of which is coaches, entrepreneurs, people that want to have a life where they touch other people's lives the same way the two of you did. Speak to them, if you will, Bob, as well, about what is your vision for the future of the personal development industry, and how can you help those folks and kind of give them the mantle for the emerging leaders of a generation. Would love to hear your thoughts, because there's a lot of folks in that community that are watching this right now.
Well, I think the personal development industry is going to continue to improve. It's got something built into it that causes everyone in it to want to find a better way to do whatever they're doing. And the internet has enabled everybody in this business to do that. There's such great ideas. What we do not want to forget, though, is that regardless of what we're doing, regardless of the medium that it's coming through, the repetition is the only way to alter the paradigm. And the paradigm is controlling our life. If we're going to win, we've got to take control over the paradigm. And the paradigm is that program that has been lodged in our subconscious mind. So we're going to keep getting better, and we're going to keep getting better methods of learning. But the basic of repetition is never going to change. Everything Denis went through with the pilots, the skaters, the rocket scientists, the engineers, repetition is required. That's how they master what they're doing. They just do it over and over and over until it's a part of them and they're a part of it. I personally believe that over the past half century, Denis has been bringing information to the people and teaching people information that's it's invaluable. And When I was invited to come on here with Denis, I was thrilled because he's the best. Denis was the first one out there in a big way. When they sold 100 million copies of his program, nobody else can say that. And that isn't an accident. That is the quality of the material. When Earl heard it, he thought, I'm going to adopt this. I'm going to put it into our company. I don't know anybody else that sold 100 million copies of a program. I want to stay connected to the guy that did. And if anybody that can hear my voice is smart, you'll order it right now, and then you can start listening to it. But you cannot listen to it if you don't order it. Hit the button, order the program, and start listening to it.
Thank you, Bob Proctor. And while we have Bob for just a few more seconds, Denis, our audience is very curious what your thoughts are on the legacy of Bob Proctor in the personal development industry, in that world. What has Bob Proctor contributed, in your opinion, Denis Waitley? For a lot of folks, this is like Michael Jordan speaking with LeBron James, two of the greatest icons. So they're very curious about what you believe Bob Proctor is for that world. Denis Waitley, please.
Well, I've always wanted to be like Bob Proctor. Earl Nightingale had an insurance company. Bob Proctor worked in an insurance company. Bob Proctor worked for Nightingale Conant before I met Nightingale Conant. And then I met Nightingale Conant. So Bob has always been just a little step ahead, and he's always been in there. And I've always said, you know, I think I can be someone like Bob Proctor and maybe have the influence of Bob Proctor if I'll just keep practicing what we both have been learning. So Bob, it's like singing to the choir, and I don't give superlatives just easy. I try to edify everyone, but I have to say that you're really a role model and a mentor of mine as well. I remember John Maxwell looked at me in the audience and said, "Oh, there's Denis, one of my mentors." And I said, "Don't say that, John, you're in your 60s. And that means that I need to be in my 80s to be your mentor." But Bob, you're a mentor of the same vintage. And you're somebody that I've looked to across the aisle and then a little bit ahead and said, you know, if it's good enough for Bob, it's good enough for me. So it's a real honor and privilege for me to be a companion, conversation, taking a walk with Bob Proctor on the road less traveled is one of the greatest things that can happen in my life.
Thank you, Denis.
And we'll end it there. Thank you very much, Bob Proctor, for working with us as we continue to make an impact around the world. This is the New Psychology of Winning tour right here live on the Los Angeles Tribune. I want to invite you, Denis, to share what that moment meant for you.
It meant so much because I'm in the Indian summer of my career. I'm in overtime. You know, I'm not ready to hang up the microphone. I'll never retire. Retire means tired for the last time. Retired, I'm retried, I'm re-inspired. And I think that moment and this whole program gives me moments not to reflect, but to project. It makes me so excited for the future. It makes me realize how many lives can be touched through this medium, and how when you get people connected together like we are, and you get excited, how many hundreds of thousands of people can be reached in such a marvelous way. People who could never have been heard before can be heard. And all you need is to have this burning fire inside, this hunger to share your knowledge and to be an original and to have integrity, to really practice what you preach and to be a product of the product, to walk your talk, to be someone who, when someone says that they're not just selling me, they're actually telling me, and they're giving me a reflection of the way they're living. Be the real thing. You don't have to flaunt a loud imitation. You don't have to be too aggressive. You just need to be assertive enough to brand yourself with authenticity. And this moment to me is I wouldn't call it a culmination of my career. I think it's the next step toward an even better time ahead. And it makes me understand that I'm only at the dawning of the new age of personal development. This is the dawning of the new age of personal development, the opportunity that we've never had before to connect everywhere in the world. And very soon, in fact, any day, you'll be able to speak in your language and I'll be able to hear your language in my language in real time. And we'll be able to do that without a translator or an interpreter, no go-between, just one-on-one globally. What a way to be able to share and finally understand one another. So I think it's the dawning of a new age. And I will call it that. I think it is the newest dawning of the next era of personal development in the world, in this type of setting that you caused to happen today. So I'm just ready to begin again and start learning new ways to communicate.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the new Psychology of Winning tour right here on the Los Angeles Tribune. Thank you, Denis Waitley. And if you're just tuning in, we're just getting started.